cold wind was blowing. It was the month of October. A light mist floated through the streets of Salem, Massachusetts. The branches of the lush green trees made strange noises, as if someone was whispering. Natalie Carter, an art historian, had come to Salem in search of an old painting. She had heard that there was a rare painting from the 1800s in an antique store, of a woman who looked like she was staring at you from every direction. When Natalie first arrived at the store, the air suddenly felt colder. The bell above the door rang, ting ting. Julian Moore, the store's owner, came forward. "First time in Salem?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange tremor. "Yes, I'm here for that painting. The Blackwell portrait." Julian's face went completely stiff. "Why are you looking for it?" "I want to know its history. I'm writing a book on 19th century art." Julian gestured quietly and led her to a closed room in the back. On the wall hung a large painting, a portrait of a woman, whose eyes were staring directly at Natalie. Her face was pale, eyes deep black, hair flowing, and lips curled into a faint smile that looked terrifying. "Margot Blackwell," Julian said, "this is her painting, but people say it's not just a picture, it's a doorway." Natalie smiled. "A doorway? To what?" "To her soul," Julian replied. "And those eyes, they move." That night, Natalie bought the painting and placed it in her hotel room. Around 3:07 a.m. that night, Natalie woke up. There was a sound in the room, like someone whispering. She turned on the light, and looked at the painting. Something had changed. Margot's eyes were now looking to the right, as if staring toward Natalie's bed. Natalie tried to laugh. "I'm just tired, probably an illusion." But as soon as she turned the light off again, she felt like someone was breathing into her ear. "Natalie," came a soft voice. She screamed. By morning, there were dark circles under her eyes. But she convinced herself, maybe it was just a dream. The next day she went to the library and began researching Margot Blackwell. Among the files she found, there was a newspaper clipping, "Local woman accused of witchcraft 1871. Margot was accused of practicing witchcraft and making children disappear. But no evidence was ever found. Still, a mob burned her alive. But the story didn't end there. They say her soul has never found peace." While returning to the hotel, Natalie felt like someone was following her. Whenever she turned around, no one was there, but every time it felt like a shadow walked with her. As soon as she entered her hotel room, the mirror fogged up by itself. And then a figure appeared in it, a woman, the same Margot, but blood was flowing from her eyes. Natalie turned around. There was nothing there. But when she looked at the painting, Margot now had red marks beneath her eyes. Terrified, she grabbed a knife to rip the painting, but as soon as the knife touched it, blood started oozing from Natalie's wrist, as if someone had slashed it. She screamed, fell and fainted. When Natalie opened her eyes, she found a bandage wrapped around her wrist. Detective Ryan Hale was standing in the room. "The hotel staff found you unconscious, bleeding. What happened here?" Natalie couldn't speak. She just pointed toward the wall. But the wall was empty. The painting was gone. "There was a painting here," Natalie said in a trembling voice, "Margot Blackwell's." Ryan lowered his head. "There are many stories linked to that name in Salem. The people who know too much about her, they don't stay alive." Natalie panicked. "I'm not going back." But that very night, she got a call from Ava, her younger sister. "Natalie, something strange is happening. A painting suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. There was a shadow of a woman outside my window. She was staring at me. Her face had burn marks." The painting had now reached Ava's house in Los Angeles. Natalie called Julian Moore. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Julian said, "Because no one believes it. When my wife died, everyone blamed me. But that painting, it's in our blood." Natalie was shocked. "What do you mean?" "Margot Blackwell was my great-grandmother." Silence filled the air. "She wasn't a witch, Natalie. She was a mother who begged the villagers to save her son. But they burned her alive instead. Since then she keeps coming back. To every person who dares to look into her eyes. And now her spirit has chosen you. That night, Natalie couldn't sleep. Every corner, every wall, and every silence was sowing a seed of fear within her. Ava's voice still echoed in her ears. She was staring at me. She decided to go to that old corner of the hotel where she had first seen the painting. But as soon as she reached that room, the wall was completely clean as if nothing had ever been there. But then, a wooden cupboard near the wall started sliding on its own. The sound of old wood cracking echoed. Natalie trembled with fear, but gathering her courage, she peeked behind the cupboard. There it was, a narrow thin crack like a secret door. She turned on her phone's flashlight and slowly entered the crack. There were stairs descending into darkness. With every step, dust swirled around, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. But there was something strange in that darkness, as if someone was breathing, very close. As she reached the bottom, she saw an old basement. Broken furniture, old locks, and burned handprints on the walls. Then, in one corner, something shined, a heavy iron chest. Dust had settled on the chest, but a name was engraved on it. M. Blackwell 1871. With trembling hands, Natalie opened it. Inside were an old burnt piece of cloth, a black threaded necklace, and a letter, still intact despite the passage of time. With shaking fingers, she opened the letter. If anyone looks into my eyes, they must understand my pain. I am not dying. I will live in every soul that fears the truth. And my eyes will follow you, until you find my son. Natalie gasped. Her son. But then, her eyes went to the bottom of the chest. There was something else. An old photograph. Like that painting, but this time there was another face in it. A little boy, whose eyes were looking straight at Natalie. And suddenly, the necklace inside the chest rose into the air on its own, and that same painting appeared again on the walls. But now there were two people in it. Margot, and her son. Natalie looked closely at the painting. For the first time, the second face in it, an innocent child, didn't have fear in his eyes, but anger. Is this the boy, for whom Margot keeps coming back? Natalie asked herself. At that moment, whispers began to echo from the basement walls like many voices speaking at once. Save us. You're too late now. She had locked her son in a cage. Now he will imprison everyone the same way. Imprison. Natalie turned around, but the stairs had disappeared. The basement was now sealed like a tomb. The air began to grow cold, and a shadow slowly emerged. A child, but his face was half rotted, half burned, and his eyes were completely red. The same boy, who was in the painting. Did my mother send you? His voice didn't sound human at all. Natalie backed away. Who are you? They burned me alive, but my mother promised she would bring me back, and you are the way. The way. Natalie's breathing grew faster. The boy slowly began to rise in the air. Behind him, a door appeared on the wall, like a dimension opening up. And there, a map was visible. Fairchild Mental Asylum, Maine. Natalie's eyes widened in shock. This was the place where Margot was last seen. And where her son had gone missing. Now Natalie had to go there. Not just to save her life, but to end this curse once and for all. Natalie set out for Maine the very next day. There was no record of Fairchild Mental Asylum on Google. No map, no article. Just one blurry photo found on Reddit with a caption. People don't go there. They disappear. In the torrential rain, after crossing winding mountain paths, Natalie reached deep into a dense forest. GPS had stopped working, her phone signal was gone, but she knew the way. She had seen it in the painting. There it was, the building. Broken windows, crumbling stones, and black fungus growing over the walls. It wasn't a building, it looked like death itself had drained it. The door creaked open on its own. As soon as she stepped inside, a strong stench jolted Natalie. As if thousands of rotting bodies had been buried there all at once. Screaming figures of children were drawn on the walls, with blood dripping from their eyes. And suddenly the door slammed shut. Thud. Natalie screamed, "No! No. Let me out. Then came a dragging sound from behind her. Shish. Mother is sleeping, don't make noise. Natalie turned around. There stood the boy, but now in his hand was a can of petrol and a matchbox. They burned me right here, in this very room. Now you'll see what I'll do. The walls suddenly caught fire. But the flames were blue, and without any heat, as if souls were burning. Natalie now understood. This boy was not made of flesh, he was made of hatred. If I find his mother, will all this stop? She asked in fear. The boy didn't speak, just wrote a name on the wall with his finger. Drive Gertrude Holloway. Who was she? Natalie asked herself. Suddenly, the wall cracked open, revealing a new gallery, filled with old psychiatric patient files. One file read, patient name, Margot Blackwell. Diagnosis, severe hallucinations. Believes she's living in 1871. Child, taken away and deemed deceased. Last note before death. I'll paint my son into existence. Even death can't keep us apart. Natalie's hands began to tremble. Margot had been labeled insane and locked away in the asylum. Her son was declared dead. And perhaps from that very pain, she became trapped in the painting. Now Natalie understood. This painting wasn't just art. It was a cursed doorway, through which a soul could come out. Or you could go in. Natalie was now inside Fairchild Asylum, but now every room began showing her a glimpse of another era. The clocks hanging on the walls were ticking backwards. And every time she opened a door, the same room appeared again. As if the building had turned into a maze that was swallowing both time and truth. You can't find the way, until you lose yourself. That voice came again, from inside the walls. A slow, rough whisper of an elderly woman. Natalie knew she was no longer just fighting the ghost of that child. She was now about to talk to Margot, the woman from the painting herself. Suddenly, she entered a room that was completely different from the rest. Perfectly clean, old furniture, red velvet curtains. And a new painting was hanging on the wall. It was a picture of Natalie, and she was crying. She had just started to step back when suddenly a sound came from behind the curtain. Soft, like dragging clothes. With trembling hands, Natalie pulled back the curtain. There sat an old woman, with pale, lifeless hair, a face full of wrinkles. But her eyes, they were just like in the painting, blood red. I told them I would bring my son back. Natalie asked fearfully, are you Margot? The woman bowed her head and said, they called me mad, took my child away from me. And then locked me inside these icy walls. But I never broke my promise. I poured him into the colors, and now he has entered you. What? He will come out through you. You are not just another human, Natalie. You are the canvas. Another way to complete my painting. Through your body my son will be born again. Her voice had now become badly cracked and echoing. Suddenly, hands started emerging from the walls. As if the entire building had come alive. One by one, the hands started grabbing Natalie, pulling her toward the painting, the one that had her image. Just then, an old file fell from Natalie's pocket, the same one she had taken from the basement. As soon as it hit the ground, the building began to tremble. And the walls screamed, "Don't open his room." Natalie remembered there was a corner in the file that was mentioned again and again. Room 313, do not enter. But now she had to go there. Because the truth was there and so was death. Natalie's heart was pounding so hard that she could no longer hear her own breath. Blood had started seeping through the cracks in the walls. And every path was turning toward room 313. As if the entire building only wanted her to go there. Room 313, a door that had never opened. But now, it was slowly creaking open on its own. Behind the door, smoke, darkness, and a stench that could burn your lungs. The room inside was so vast, it was impossible. As if it was a passage to another world. There were no paintings on the walls. The walls themselves were the canvas. And on them were not colors, but figures made of human blood. In every figure, the same boy, the same woman, and now a third face. Natalie's. You are the final stroke of my painting, a slow, echoing voice spread across the room. And when it's complete, my son and I will be free forever. Natalie told herself, don't be afraid. This is just a place, just bricks and memories. But then a painting came out of the wall. And came to life. Out of it stepped a figure, half its face burned, eyes sunken deep, but a smile that no human could ever wear. You are the one who saw him. Now he will see you, forever. The figure extended its hand toward Natalie. Not a hand, but a paintbrush, made of human bone. Take it, it said, give the final stroke with your blood, and set us free. Natalie picked up the brush, and at that moment, the ground began to shake. The ceiling of the room split open, and something was there. A massive eye, so huge, it stared through the entire ceiling. That eye seemed to pierce directly into Natalie's mind. She saw Margot's past. The tortures by the doctors. The child being burned alive. Being declared insane, and locked within the walls. And now, their souls had become trapped inside a painting. Caught in an eternal cycle. But this cycle would break, only if Natalie gave her soul to the painting. Or else, Natalie whispered, I could burn it. And she threw the brush to the floor, pulling out a Zippo lighter. But wait, a voice came from behind. If you burn the painting, the child will burn with it. The one who was never even guilty. Now Natalie stands at a crossroads. 1. Burn the painting and end all of this but destroy an innocent soul in the process. 2. Or offer herself to the painting to save the others but never return. Natalie's hand trembled as she held the Zippo lighter. Her eyes were fixed on the painting. And now her own face in it looked more alive than ever. Her eyes inside the painting were blinking. And her lips softly whispered, help me. Behind her, Margot's spirit floated in the air. No longer resembling anything human. Her body had turned to smoke, ash, and burning black clothes. Her eyes glowed like blood. If you burn it, her voice now echoed from every wall. You won't just kill me. But also him, the one still trapped inside my child. Natalie turned around, her hands beginning to burn. As if the brush's touch had been like living fire. Suddenly, the ground in front of the painting cracked open. A pit emerged, swallowing all the rotting past within. Natalie. A small, innocent voice came, that of a little boy. The same boy she had seen again and again in the paintings. I'm trapped inside, but I'm not afraid anymore. You are, because she wants to make you a painting too. So she'll never be alone again. Natalie understood now. This wasn't just revenge. It was a mother's insane desperation. A woman who never accepted her son's death. Who went mad with love and turned her own soul into a canvas. And now she wanted everyone to be trapped within that same canvas. Room 313 was now falling apart completely. Hundreds of faces peeked from the walls. Each one screaming, each eye melting, each tongue crying out the same word, paint me. Natalie felt like her mind would explode. She lit the Zippo. And was about to bring the brush close to the flame. When suddenly the entire room jolted to a halt. And on the wall ahead, a crack appeared. From it came a bright blue light. Like another world entirely. Peace, coolness, and the scent of truth. The boy's voice came again. If you free me, everything will stop, but you must listen to me. My final memory is inside that trunk. The one Margot always kept hidden. Natalie asked in a trembling voice. What trunk? Under her room in a drawer. No one's ever opened it. Natalie ran out immediately. The walls of room 313 still trying to swallow her. But somehow she made it out. She was back in the same corridor where the walls breathed. Something or someone followed her at every step. But she was no longer the prey. She was now searching for answers. She returned to the room where she had first found the painting. The curtains were torn, the walls scratched. She dropped to her knees and pulled back the carpet. Underneath was a rusted trapdoor. She opened it, and saw a small, dark room below. Inside it was an old iron trunk. Small handprints still marked its surface. As if someone had knocked from inside for years. Natalie placed her hand on the trunk. Her fingers felt as if they were sinking into ice. This trunk was not just old. It felt alive somehow. She gently touched the rusty lock. It was old but still closed. But as soon as Natalie turned the lock, click, the lock opened by itself. A sound like an old breath came from inside the trunk. As if someone was breathing a sigh of relief after centuries. Natalie lifted the lid. What was inside? An old diary. A children's sketchbook. And a small red jacket stained with blood. The diary belonged to Margot. But the first few pages were written in another handwriting. A man's. The 27th of July 1892. Margot kept screaming again today. She refused to bury the child's body. She says, he is still breathing. But I saw. Her lips were blue, her pulse was stopped. Natalie's lips dried up. She read the next page. The 28th of July 1892. Margot now wants to turn that dead body into a painting. She says, if I make his face immortal, his soul will never leave. I'm scared. This woman is no longer my wife. Natalie's eyes then fell on the sketchbook. It had dozens of pictures drawn by a child's hands. Sometimes his mother crying, sometimes locking himself in a trunk. And one sketch showed him trapped inside the trunk, while someone outside was painting him. Natalie felt suffocated. She had buried the child alive, and painted over him. Suddenly, the walls of the room started shaking again. A dragging sound came from behind. Natalie turned. Margot's spirit now looked completely decayed and burning. But there was no anger anymore. Just empty eyes. You touched my memories. Now you must live in that trunk. Forever. With my son. Margot reached her hand toward the trunk, and its lid began to open by itself. It was no longer just a trunk, but a gateway to another world, where children's laughter and screams echoed. Natalie stepped back, but the ground beneath her feet started melting. Then a hand came out from the trunk. The same child. His face was alive now, but incomplete. He said softly, if you take me out, I can end everything. Tears flowed from Natalie's eyes. But then paintings started falling from the ceiling. Each painting had a face. One that Natalie recognized. Old hotel staff, tourists, children, and her own mother. Her mother. Natalie started trembling badly, because one painting showed the same face that she had seen in her childhood, when she first came to this hotel. And now everything was falling into place. She had come to this hotel as a child for the first time. Her mother disappeared here, and since then, a fear had settled inside Natalie. She didn't even know what she was afraid of. Now it was her choice. Either free the child, or become trapped inside the trunk herself. At that moment, a clock on the wall started ticking. With hands moving backwards, every tick-tock brought her closer to her decision. Natalie was now bent over the trunk. A hand was coming out of it. A child's hand. Wet, cold, but very real. She heard that slow voice ringing in her ears. Take me out, I can end everything. But Natalie no longer trusted it. Because every spirit was showing something different. Suddenly she remembered. On the hotel's first day, when she came downstairs, she had seen a strange staircase in the basement. That did not go down straight, but slanted a little, like leading to a maze. Maybe Margot hadn't locked the trunk here, but it had been dragged from somewhere else and brought here. If this trunk is a trap, then the real story is still hidden. Instead of pulling the child out, Natalie put her hand inside the trunk. But it was no bottom. Her hand was going inside as if in water. A shock hit her, and in the depth of the trunk, she found herself falling. She was now inside the trunk, but it was a room. The walls were covered with pictures stained with blood. Each picture had a child, and a woman, who was slowly pulling out everyone's eyes. Margot. There was a corner where candles were burning, and in between them was a line drawn, with only one name, the album. Natalie went closer and looked. A thick photo album. But this album was not filled with pictures, rather cut-out faces. As she flipped every page, children's screams echoed in the room. You rejected my art, Natalie. Margot's spirit came out from the wall. Now her face was not human, but made of melted paint and bones. People like you could never understand my art. I made children immortal, so that they never feel pain. Natalie screamed. You killed them. You stole their childhood. Margot laughed. And you think you are different? You killed yourself by coming to this hotel. You escaped from this place as a child. But your mother stayed. And now, you have come back, alone. Natalie's breath stopped. My mother. Then a door behind her opened by itself. A blue light was shining from inside. There, sitting on a chair, was her mother. But she was not alive. She was melting like wax. Her eyes kept repeating one thing. Save me, take me out of this painting. Natalie now understood. Not every spirit can be saved. But if she burned the album, maybe everyone would be freed. She took a candle from the room and set fire to the album. A loud scream. The walls shook. The trunk trembled. Margot burned and fell inside. And the whole room echoed with the screams of mute children. But the story did not end there. Because as soon as Natalie opened her eyes, she was again in that same hotel room. But now there was a new painting on the wall. It was Natalie, her eyes slowly turning toward the viewer. Who will come next? The same old hotel room. But now there was a new painting hung inside. It was Natalie's face. Her eyes slowly moved here and there, as if trying to see who would enter next. The Rosewood Inn Hotel was now completely deserted. But the strange thing was, this room was booked every week, on its own. A travel agent would receive a call. A name would be given. We are sending a guest under Karma Manor Art Experience. And then, every time, some artist was sent to that room. This time came Theodore, a young photographer, struggling with loneliness, talking only through his pictures. He had a camera, which could capture people's souls. He had come here for an art project. Haunted spaces where emotion bleeds. When Theodore stepped into the room, he was immediately drawn to the painting on the wall. The painting that was now faintly smiling. He lifted his camera and took a photo. The flash went off, and a jolt hit. Natalie's eyes in the painting closed. But next to the wall, a new shadow started to emerge. Theodore felt, this canvas is not just art. It's someone's scream, someone's memory, and maybe someone's punishment. At night, the room's lights started flickering. In the bedroom mirror appeared a face, exactly like the one Natalie had seen. A child without eyes. Theodore was so scared he couldn't even move. When a voice echoed, "Did you capture her in your camera?" Theodore immediately looked at the camera. On the screen was Natalie. But she was slowly smiling at him. "You saw me, now I will see you." Her eyes began to peek out of the screen. Theodore shouted. But his voice didn't leave the room. Now there were 4 paintings on the walls, each with a different face. But all their eyes were looking at the camera. A voice echoed, "Theodore, can you turn your pain into art?" Melted blood started rising from the floor. And the camera started taking pictures by itself. With every click, the walls screamed. Theodore ran. But as soon as he opened the room's door, outside was not the old hotel corridor, but an art gallery, where Margot's paintings were hung. In every painting, was a person, a clock, and a door. Theodore saw. The clock's hands were moving backwards. He understood. This gallery was a time loop. And his soul was about to become part of this artwork. He reached the last room of the gallery, where a chair was placed. And the wall in front of it was blank. A brush and colors were set. A voice said, "You have to make your deepest memory. And lock yourself inside it." Theodore slowly picked up the brush. He painted a face on the wall. And that face was his mother's. He was trembling badly, but his hand wouldn't stop. As soon as he finished the painting, the room shook. A hand came out from the wall. His mother's hand. But she was not a spirit. She was alive, or rather, never really died. And then Margot's voice came from behind. Every artist gives birth to their own fear. Theodore's eyes went wide open. His mother, the very face he had painted on the wall, was now standing in front of him. But she was not his mother, she had become something else. Her face was just like an old photograph he had seen. A photo of a woman who died at the Rosewood Inn in 1954. Theodore's breaths quickened. Mom, he asked in a trembling voice. The woman smiled. You finally recognized me. But you were dead. I wasn't dead, I was killed. And the one who killed me now lives within the walls of this room. Theodore pulled out an old photo, which he had taken from the hotel basement. Written on the back was, Eleanor Monroe, artist, missing, October 9, 1954. It was the same face. Theodore's mother. Now the truth began to unfold. Theodore's mother, Eleanor, was a famous artist. In the 1950s, she had come to the Rosewood Hotel to attend an art retreat. But under the name of that retreat, there was a secret art cult, the Unseen Gaze, where artists were connected to their souls to create live paintings, which trapped the artist's breaths, memories, and pain inside. Eleanor tried to break this tradition, and then a painter named Margot deceitfully trapped her inside the wall. She didn't become a painting. She became the soul of the wall. And now, she could see everything. Every guest, every scream, every color. Theodore, who until now was just an artist, now knew the story of his own blood. His mother said, now your camera will do what my brush once did. You will show the truth, but you will pay the price. What price? Your eyes, your memories, and your fear. At that moment, the walls of the room began to melt. From all around came sobbing, laughter, and whispers from old times. Natalie's voice was heard too. Theodore, don't listen to them. They will make you like me. Theodore turned. Natalie was now crying in the painting. Suddenly, a new chest appeared in the center of the room. It was the same chest Natalie had opened in the basement. But now it was bigger and it was beating. Theodore slowly stepped forward, reached out his hand. As soon as he touched the chest, a loud scream echoed. The room plunged into darkness. And now, the chest was open. But inside was nothing, except an upside-down hanging painting. It had a stranger's face. Cut, burned half, black holes instead of eyes. And below it was written, The Collector. Theodore stepped back. His mother's voice echoed again. This is the one who trapped me. This is the one who defeated Margot. And now it's searching for you. The Collector was gathering all the spirits of the Rosewood Hotel, one by one, to trap their stories, their art, in an endless gallery. Then, Theodore saw a door on the ceiling of the room. He asked his mother, What is that? She said, That door is not of time. It will take you to those who don't even appear in the paintings anymore. The room was drowned in darkness. The walls were breathing. The chest was still beating. And then a strange humming echoed. He paints what he traps and he traps what he paints. The voice belonged to someone else. But it held pain, anger, and trust all at once. Theodore looked around. Natalie. It was Natalie's voice but changed. Her voice now sounded like a soul freed from captivity. Then suddenly, an old painting on the wall shook. It showed Natalie. But now she was not afraid. Her eyes glowed red. Her face burned with hatred. I am no longer the one who came to the hotel. Natalie said. I wasn't trapped in the painting, I was locked inside myself. Now I hear, I see. And now I will speak too. In front of Theodore, the painting's wall cracked, and there was a small, dark room, where Natalie's true soul sat. Candles burning all around, and unfinished paintings. Natalie's story now began. When she had reached the basement, she saw a small boy, sitting with his head bowed, alone. That boy was the first painting of the Collector. But as soon as Natalie tried to talk to him, the boy looked into her eyes, and saw everything Natalie wanted to hide. Guilt, fear, loneliness, and the secret of her mother's death. The Collector trapped Natalie's soul, but couldn't win her mind. Because Natalie was not one to lose herself in art. She was one to weaponize art. She began changing herself inside the painting, sharpening herself with hatred in every brushstroke, weaving a trap in every color. Now she has returned, in a form no one recognizes. The Red Muse, the red-eyed spirit, who will no longer let herself be trapped in any painting. She told Theodore. You open this door, but not alone. Take me with you. I am no longer just a painting, I am a weapon. Then the red light from Natalie's painting entered Theodore's eyes. Now his eyes were no longer normal. He could see those souls beyond the paintings. The lost artists. Now Theodore was not alone. With him were Natalie, as the red spirit, his mother, as the soul of the wall, and an old shadow which until now was hidden. And before them stood that door, which was beyond any time, beyond any room. The door slowly opened. Along with the black smoke, an old, stale aura of colors emerged. As if someone had pressed down centuries of lives trapped inside paintings. Theodore and Natalie were no longer ordinary humans. An artist, a soul, and a passion. All three had now become one. Natalie's red eyes had become even sharper. She could now recognize every color that was once a human being. Behind the door was a long hall, lined with thousands of paintings. Each frame held a face. Afraid, broken, but alive. And standing in the center was the collector. He was no longer human. His face had become a blank canvas. Every time someone looked at it, it would change. Why have you come back? The collector's voice held a false calm. Natalie replied, to take back those you buried forcefully into art. Theodore pulled out an old brush, one that once belonged to his mother. That brush no longer held ink, but was filled with the light of souls. He made the first stroke in the air, and a radiant crack appeared across the paintings. The paintings began to move. Not screams, voices of hope echoed. The souls whose faces had been trapped in colors for centuries now wanted to come out. The collector screamed, if these souls escape, then I will cease to exist. Natalie smiled and said, art is a medium of freedom, not imprisonment. And then, she placed both her palms on the wall of paintings, the very place where her own soul was first imprisoned. A burst of brilliant red light exploded, and all the canvases shattered into pieces. Every soul that had ever been trapped was now floating in the air, smiling, silent, and free. Theodore looked at his mother. She gave a gentle smile and disappeared peacefully. The collector was now left alone, within his blank canvas, where there was no color left, only silence. The story didn't end there. Theodore and Natalie left that old hotel. But before leaving, they took the chest, the paintings, and every soul's connection with them. Now they run an art gallery, where every painting tells the story of a liberated soul. And most importantly, now no painting follows you with its eyes. Instead, it touches your heart. Happy ending, but remember, if you ever see a depth in a painting, beyond the eyes, perhaps someone is still trapped within.